is going to be sufficient either.
Correct.
The fact that we offer to pay, you know, some portion, and Pat's suggestion is less than 50-50 because he's trying to avoid us making a commitment. It's really just the cost of pipe.
It's actually, though, it's more than 50. The better part of the cost is in putting the pipe in. Usually, unless it's a real specialty drive.
It's best as a special driveway.
Depends on the driveway.
But see, when people put in driveways now, we started a couple of years ago, they're told up front that they do a brick driveway or concrete driveway, once they go past that ditch line, that they take that responsibility, because if the culvert has to be fixed, or we have to re-ditch, or the pavement gets fixed, that apron part that's in the public right of way gets damaged, that's at their cost to replace, because we're only gonna blacktop.
Do we give them that in writing?
That was, I think we did have that on our thing. I'll have to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure we do, yes.
If it isn't,
Yeah.
please put it in writing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering if the enforcement mechanism in the ordinance wouldn't be, it's in the right of way, we give ourselves the right, if they don't replace the culvert after we run through our test and our determination, and we have standards in the ordinance as to what the requirement is, that after, you know, so much notice and whatever, the village can come in and replace the culvert because it's in our right of way. I'm not sure whether we have the right to create a lien for that or not, but I mean, you know, if you're talking about how
You're
you would
abating a
actually,
nuisance.
you're abating a nuisance.
Well, I know we have the right if we go and clean out buckthorn from somebody's ditch or weeds from a ditch that's impeding the flow of water.
There's a statute.
Yeah, we can bill out the homeowner for that.
You know, my thought is maybe before we decide on what the cost sharing would be, why don't we try and see what the stick part would look like first, because that would be part of the ordinance. It wouldn't just be that we offer to pay.
No, he's not looking for an ordinance, though, he's looking for policy.
Actually, I suggested here that exactly to Bruce's point, I guess we're putting forward here both the iron fist and the velvet glove we're trying to arrive at here, is that something that gives us the authority to get these things fixed, but also some level of participation that the village is comfortable with, just to keep it from being a completely antagonistic and drawn-out process that it typically is when I'm trying to compel somebody to replace a culvert.
Especially since the one, I know the people at 800 Huffman contacted you and said, please can the village help me?
And for years, they've talked to Pat Walsh, I mean,
Every year.
yeah.
And then the people up on Forest Glen give us phone calls for the last, next 4
What-
or 5 years, and they're all.
These are people, Bruce, who would participate joyfully. If they were offered this much from the village, I think they would jump like the celebrating.
Well, that's on Hoffman. What about Forest Glen?
Forest Glen, again, when Pat went and talked to that homeowner, she simply thought that the occasional inundation of her and her neighbor's front yards was, you know, was nothing to get too
So
concerned
she
about.
wouldn't want to participate, most likely.
And my expectation is that's my experience is that's more typically the attitude.
Well, and then here comes the issue. You're talking about velvet glove and iron fist. Do we go up to people who say, absolutely, spring flooding is a normal part of the life cycle of my woods, and I don't want it damaged at all, I want it left the way it is, I don't want you touching my culvert, and say to them, guess what, you're gonna have to pay for it because we want it. I mean, that's potentially what we're gonna wind up doing.
Well, yeah, otherwise you're just offering money and you don't really have any assurance that you can get it replaced anyway. If you really want to if you really believe that there is a threshold beyond which we should be able to require an improvement, then maybe, you know, we should try and develop what that would look like to see if the board's even
Well,
comfortable with that.
that's what we said, Pat, we need parameters.
Well, that's what Jack was saying that.
Yeah.
Standards.
Yeah, we need to see what those would look like before we see how far along you want to go with that. I'm not sure myself, you know, how objective they become. I guess you measure flow rates, or maybe they have.
I like to go and take a picture after a rainstorm. The water's real high on the side of the wall.
You get a real good rainstorm and take it upstream with me, it's even funnier.
We certainly are capable of coming up with objective standards that can be codified rather than Pat takes a picture.
That's what we need. That's what we need to look at.
Sure. Otherwise, you're not being objective.
I'll just put this on the table with, no color.
Boy, this
one way
table's
or the
getting
other.
full.
But a quarter of the community has already paid for sewers. Why should they subsidize other parts of the community who have not paid that freight. Just put it out there. A quarter of the community has already paid for sewers, for sanitary sewers and street sewers.
Probably more than a quarter.
A little more than a quarter. Why should they subsidize those who haven't? They've already paid for theirs, nobody subsidized theirs.
They didn't pay for street sewers, they paid for sanitary sewers.
No, but in Thorngate,
Thorngate's,
They paid for everything.
Storm sewers.
Village
storm
did not
sewers.
subsidize that.
No.
You didn't have anybody over on, another, on,
But those are private
Highway.
streets.
Yeah,
Those are private streets.
Yeah, we're not talking about private streets.
We're not talking about private streets.
still, why should they subsidize?
Well,
Just put it
Does
out
the
there.
village have a
Because we're
responsibility for
We're
village
responsible
streets?
for our public streets. We're not responsible for private streets.
Remember, we resurfaced the village-owned streets too, we don't resurface the private streets.
Right, but we're talking.
There are a lot of services.
We're talking beyond the streets though. This is, a private improvement that's been done on public property, right?
No, there's a difference between private streets and public streets.
I understand.
No,
the
he's saying a
difference.
private improvement. It's an
It's
improvement.
not a private improvement.
Is the village now responsible for their driveways as well then, Bill?
No, we're not
No,
responsible
we
for the
do
driveway.
maintain the ditches. We do maintain the
I think
ditches.
what Bruce was saying was that, picking up on Pat's comment, we've treated the culverts in the past as private improvements
Right,
Yeah.
in the public
right.
right of way.
Mhm.
I suppose they could have built a bridge over and not had a culvert or any obstruction at all if they wanted, and then they wouldn't have to worry about replacing a culvert.
I'll bring back for the next meeting,
Okay.
I will flesh this concept out more with some objective standards, and also include what I see as the likely costs to the village, and perhaps we can take this up at the next meeting with more information at our fingertips.
Good. We have no reason to go into executive session. You have to comment tonight?
Just a real brief one. I got the Mike's minutes from the staff meeting, and I just want to make a comment. I think they're great. I don't know whose idea they were, but it's a great thing. I
Mr.
really
Static.
appreciate it. Well, whether it's Bill or Bill, I appreciate it. Unfortunately, Mike pays the price on this.
Bill, did you pass on to the board your comment that the staff meetings were far more productive than you ever imagined they would be?
I've been selling that as long as they've existed. I would like to point out that the sprinkler ordinance doesn't take effect until July. For those of you that have builders that are concerning, as I have a couple of residents calling me, if they get the program into effect before D-Day, they're home free.
I bet I know who you talked to, because I talked to her.
We
too.
all talk to her.
Yeah, people have got,
It's a valid concern, except that she's got a Mexican design builder that snuffs the fire out immediately if it starts. But what happens to the people inside?
It apparently sucks the oxygen out of the building from
That's
under
We don't have the answer to that.
You know what? It's a green building, and everybody knows that green wood doesn't burn.
I guess.
is there any reason to go to executive session? The next meeting of the Board of Trustees is May 4th at 8 p.m.
We'll have public hearings that night.
And we have a public hearing that night also.
And
We'll
we'll
start
start
at 8
earlier.
o'clock. We'll start at 8 o'clock. All in favor?
Put it away to your best ability.
Bill, we'll move and second it.
All right, now go.